Hello guys, thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to have a look at what looks at first glance to be just a simple envelope, but it details a traumatic time in German history. It details the plight of the Jewish population in Germany. This is a airmail letter from Berlin to New York City. It was sent off in March of 1941 from Berlin, and we'll have a look at the cover first of all. So on the top there are two stamps, a 40 Pfennig stamp and a 25 Pfennig stamp, and that made up the correct rate to the United States for airmail items under the 5 grams. You can see on the top it's been marked 4 grams at the post office, so it is the correct amount of money paid. The 25 Pfennig would have paid for the basic foreign rate, and the 40 Pfennig was the basic airmail rate. On the side here it says by Clipper, and that would have indicated the route that the letter was intended to go by, and that is the Pan Am Clippers airplanes flying the North Atlantic route. The letter would have been sent off in Berlin. It would have ended up in Lisbon in Portugal and would have gone across to the United States from there. In March of 1941, the United States were not at war with Germany, and there was free mail between the two. This letter here has been addressed to a Mrs. and Mr. Dr. Bruno Steinmetz, who resided at the time at 420 Riverside Drive in New York City. The building is still there. The Riverside Drive is the kind of faces out onto the Hudson River. Quite a nice neighborhood at the moment. Would have been quite a nice neighborhood at the time too. The building is quite a nice white multi-storied block of apartments, and it's interesting that it's marked down as Mrs. and Mr. Doctor. Usually would have been Mr. or Dr. Bruno, but I'll come to that in a minute. So the letter is etiquette airmail, so it's a typical airmail quality envelope. The contents are no longer available. Going on to the back here, you can see the name of the person who sent the letter, and at the top it says Max Israel Rosenthal from Berlin, W35 Blumenhof number 15, which was quite a nice neighborhood at the time, quite a upper middle class neighborhood. Looking onto the internet, Max Israel Rosenthal was a successful businessman at the time. He was Jewish. The name Israel was added to Jewish people, males, from 1938 onwards. They were required by the German government to insert the middle name Israel if their name was not Jewish sounding. Females, I think, had the name Sarah. Max Israel Rosenthal, he was married to Cecile Rosenthal, and she died in Auschwitz-Birkenau. She was deported in 1942 to Auschwitz. Max Rosenthal, he himself survived the war. He was, I would imagine, probably in his late 60s or early 70s when the letter was written. He was unwell. He ended up in the Jewish hospital in Berlin, which kind of protected him from deportation until he got released from the hospital. He was actually deported in 1943. He ended up in Theresienstadt in the Czech Republic. He survived the war, ended up getting back to Berlin in September of 1945. He subsequently, in 1948, went to New York City, to the United States, and not long after that he died. On the bottom of the letter you can see a strip here. That's a censor strip. It shows that the letter was opened by the German authorities. It was censored and was resealed. So you got the strip here. It says geöffnet, which means open, so it's an officially opened letter. There's the censor stamp there, which says geprüft on the top, or checked. And this letter would have gone from Berlin to Frankfurt, and Frankfurt dealt with the North American traffic, airmail traffic, and where you can see that as there's an E on the bottom of the marks, and that is the code for Frankfurt. From Frankfurt, it would have been moved on to, as I said earlier, to Portugal, and then on to the United States from there. So it has been opened. Obviously, there was nothing of concern in the letter. It went on its way. Max Israel Rosenthal had a daughter who managed to leave Germany in 1939, so she was one of the lucky people that managed to escape Germany before the war started, and she ended up going to New York City. So that makes me kind of suspect, I don't have any proof, but possibly Mrs. Steinmetz would have been his daughter. I've got the details of the family, Bruno Steinmetz, from the American censor for 1940 for New York City. And at the time, Bruno Steinmetz was a 45-year-old doctor. He was married to Margaret. She was 30 at the time, so that kind of fits in with Max Israel Rosenthal being about late 60s or thereabouts, so it could well have been her daughter, or his daughter. And they also had a child. They had a young daughter called Anita, who would have been 3 or 4 at the time. The censor, the New York 1940 censor, states that both Bruno Steinmetz, his wife Margaret, and Anita, their daughter, they were all German. They were all from Berlin, so obviously they managed to escape Germany before the war started and settled in New York, as a lot of Jewish immigrants did at the time. Dr. Steinmetz, he was a doctor of medicine. It's interesting that Blumenhof, the address given by Max Rosenthal, it had a large hospital at the bottom of its street, the Elizabeth Hospital, which is still there. The Blumenhof neighborhood is no longer there. It's been built over now, but the hospital is still there. So possibly, who knows, he might have he might have worked at that hospital before the war, met the daughter there. You never know. I don't have the details for that, but it's quite interesting. As I say, Max Israel Rosenthal survived the war. He ended up in Theresienstadt, and makes quite a nice, interesting letter of that period of time, of the suffering of the Jewish people in Germany at the time. You had the lucky ones, like the family here, that managed to escape before the war, and then the other ones that ended up being deported to the various concentration camps afterwards. So it's quite a nice item to have in my collection, in my Third Reich postal history collection. So, don't think I got anything else more to say. Interestingly, Max Rosenthal's apartment in Blumenhof was confiscated by the German government in, I think, 1942. And looking on the internet, it was actually handed over to a Kriegsmarine submarine commander. Another mark here, there's a 1173, I think it says. That is the mark of the actual censor that opened the letter and read it. So that's the identifying code there for the person who opened the letter. So anyhow, I'll leave it at that. Hope you enjoy that little video on my Third Reich postal history items. And as always, thanks for watching, and bye for now.